Good morning, everyone. It is Kate, the West Coast Paper Crafter from Vancouver Island, Canada, and it is Sunday, April 28th. Yes, I'm right, April 28th at 10 a.m. And today I am coming on live for a free Latte Love online class. So I'm really excited for this class today. I hope you all enjoy the projects that I've designed, and we'll get started shortly. So if you are watching live, you are joining me on Facebook, and if you're catching a replay, you could be joining me on YouTube or Facebook, because I will post this video to YouTube once the live is finished. So I think that's it. We'll switch my camera over and we'll get started. So close your eyes, because I'm gonna adjust my phone and flip it around. Good morning, Nancy, I see you. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, so I got everything ready to go. And we will get started with our first project, one of three. So project number one is just simple stamping. If you're not familiar with simple stamping, it is just ink, paper, and stamps. So this is the card we're gonna do. I'm using some colors that I don't normally use, but they worked out quite well. So I've got soft seafoam base and a lemon lime twist layer, and then just basic white. And this is the inside. So we shall get started. So for this card, I used Tuxedo Black and Early Espresso, but you could easily do this card in just the Early Espresso. All right, so I have got, let's see, all these pieces ready to go. Our card base is 8.5 by 5.5, and I scored it at 4 1/4 on the 8.5-inch side. Our lemon twist layers, they're both the same. They're 5 1/4 by 4, and then our white layers are 5 by 3 1/4. So I'm just gonna put aside the card base and the lemon lime layers, and we'll get to stamping. All right, so first thing we're gonna wanna do is stamp the sentiment in Early Espresso. And I want to do that first, otherwise it might be like more challenging to stamp around it. So this way I know exactly where I can put all my other stamps. So I'm gonna stamp the sentiment, hello there, let's catch up, on the bottom third off to the right of one of my white layers. All right, and then next I'm going to stamp my coffee mugs. Now you could use Early Espresso for your mugs or basic black, whatever you prefer. And I'm just going to stamp these in a random pattern on this layer. Super easy and quick. All right, now, before I do anything else, I'm just going to clean up my glass mat so I don't get ink smudges. And we'll add some coffee beans. And I'll do the coffee beans in Early Espresso. Oops, I got my crumb cake out instead. That's okay. Change of plan. I'm gonna do my coffee beans in Crumb Cake only because I grabbed the wrong ink pad, but either will work. So just random and a little bit offset on the edges of the card. One more right there. Maybe one more, just on the edge. Okay, well the crumb cake worked out just fine. However, my original card design was Early Espresso, but that's fine. And now what I need to do is stamp in use my reach while I clean off my stamp pad. I'm just going to stamp in the coffee fill, and I'll do that. This time I'll make sure in early espresso. I just got to grab the stamp. I knew I was forgetting something. I had got everything ready to go for the first couple projects, but I forgot my little fill stamp. All right. Okay, so early espresso, if you like a dark coffee, which I do. It's a little more difficult to line up when I'm demonstrating, simply because I can't get my head right over the card, but it worked out really well. So that is it for the first layer. And now I just want to add a little bit of interest to the inside of the card. So I'm just going to do some coffee beans, and just to stay consistent, I will do them in the crumb cake, even though my sample was an early espresso. I really like this tiny little coffee bean stamp. I think it's just so darn cute. All right, so before I forget, I'm just going to give these a quick clean. Otherwise, I will end up forgetting that I haven't cleaned them. Okay, so now for card 1, all we're doing is layering our white layers onto our lemon lime twist, and then we'll glue everything down to our card. Oh, you're having your mocha this morning, Nancy? I'm jealous. I have had my coffees early this morning because I got up earlier than I was planning, and I try to limit myself to just 2 a day because I could probably drink a whole pot of coffee. But I've had my coffee quota for the day, so that's it. All right. Okay, so that's layered on the lemon lime twist, and that's going to be for the card front. And while I'm at it, I'm going to add my layer for the inside of the card. So right now, my husband is still sleeping. So at some point, I'm sure he's going to wake up. He's probably going to forget that I'm doing a card class. So when he wakes up, it might get a little bit noisy for a moment until he remembers that I'm doing a class. Right now, I do all my crafting at our kitchen table, but I'm very motivated to turn our guest room into a craft room. So I've got a few things in my Amazon cart to get things out of the closet and into some storage that I can store under the bed, because our guest room, our spare room, the closet is full of all our camping blankets and extra bedding and other things. And I have no room in that closet. So I'm going to order some underbed storage. I'm going to rearrange that room, and I've got this little corner desk that I've had since I was probably 20 years old from IKEA that I need to just make a couple adjustments to, and I am going to move everything into the spare room. Because right now, if I was to pop the camera out of the holder and show you, I have got all my crafting supplies in a corner of my dining room. And it's been like that for 2 years, and I think my husband's really sick of it. All right, here we go. Card number 1, simple stamping, just ink, stamp, and paper. Just like that. Okay, now we can move on. You limit yourself to 1 and 10 a.m. So, perfect timing. Yeah, it is going to be awesome, Nancy. I'm looking forward to it. I was talking to my husband about like downsizing the bed because we have the room, the bed takes up so much space, but I'd like to get maybe, I don't know, a couch that turns into a bed or a futon up there that I can fold down into a bed, but it's in discussions. All right, card number 2, we're stepping it up because we're adding some ribbon, some embellishments, and we're also going to do some die cutting. And just a simple layer for the inside of this card. So let's get started. I've got my instructions and measurements here so I don't forget what I'm doing. So we'll go through all the measurements. I've got a Crumb Cake card base, 8.5 by 5.5, and again scored at 4 1/4. I've got an early espresso layer that I cut with a perennial postage die. It's 4.5 by 3 1/4. So if you don't have this die, you can just cut cardstock to that measurement, 4.5 and 3 1/4. And then I've got a piece of the coffee bean DSP from the Latte Love suite. I love this paper, and that's 4 1/4 by 3. For the inside, just basic white, 5 1/4 by 4. And then I've got some random pieces of cardstock that we're going to stamp on. So I've got, this is Pool Party, but if I put Lost Lagoon in the supply list, my apologies, Lost Lagoon will work, but I actually use Pool Party. So I'll check the supply list after this class and see if I made a mistake. I've got Crumb Cake and then a piece of pecan pie. All right, and of course I've got my polka dot ribbon or trim. All right, so we'll just start by adding our layers to the front of the card base. I'm going to move some stuff out of my way. And all I'm going to do is glue down this designer series paper to my early espresso die cut. And I'm just going to maneuver a little bit before the glue dries so I have it evenly spaced, and you can see that nice edge that the perennial postage die gives you. And then, oops, that was loud. Then I'm going to add a little bit of this trim. Now, this is not trim that you can easily tie a bow with. So if you have it and you want to tie a bow, I would suggest cutting it in half, and it makes it a little bit easier to tie it into a bow. All right, so I like to put down a little bit of tear and tape to hold my ribbon in place when I add it to the back of a layer. And for this one, I'm going to add some tear and tape just underneath where the ribbon's going to go, but I'll also put a piece over top of it just in case, because I don't want it to come apart. All right, so I'm just going to make sure I'm in the camera view. Sometimes I forget, so if I end up forgetting, I will try to catch myself. So I'm just folding it over, pushing it down onto that tear and tape. And then I'm going to add a little bit over top. Like so. And I'm just going to leave it like that. And that's just going to help keep that trim stuck to the back of my card. It's not a normal ribbon or anything. It's coarse. I find it doesn't stick quite as well to the tear and tape as a normal ribbon does, so I just like to give it a little more reinforcement. So this, I'm just popping up onto the card front. And I'll do about 6 because I don't like my layers to sag. I could add more, but I'm always a little heavy on my dimensionals, so I'm trying to be a little more frugal. All right, we've got this on the front of our card, and now what we're going to do is stamp our coffee mugs, and I'm going to show you a little trick, because if you have used this particular stamp and one of the fills, if you cut these out with a die and stick it on your coffee mug, I don't like the what's the word I'm looking for, you get a bit of an edge that, I don't know, I was trying to color in with blends and I didn't quite like how it looked, so I ended up figuring out, well, I'll just show you. So I will just show you. So I'm going to stamp in Los Lagoon on my pool party the outline of this of the coffee cup. Now I'm going to grab my cut and emboss. I need to make some room for it, so hang on. All right, here we go. I would normally be using my mini when I'm doing an online class, but I want to cut 2 layers. And my mini doesn't always cut 2 layers of cardstock consistently, so that's why I'm doing that. And I've got my die ready to go, and a little piece of washi tape just to hold it in place. And I like to take my fingers and just kind of stick them a little bit and take some of that stickiness off the washi tape before I put it down on my cardstock. And then that way I'm not likely to tear any paper when I pull the tape off. All right, so now I have got this die cut in Pecan Pie, and then just gently pulling this tape off because I don't want to rip my cardstock. Even though I took some of the stick off, I'm always really gentle. Okay, so now I've got my coffee mug in Pool Party, and what I'm going to do is grab that circle die that fits the stamped image for the fill in your coffee cup, and I'm going to cut out the inside of this mug. Just going to get it lined up as best I can and add my washi tape. So I've done this for the sample card in Pool Party and a mug in Crumb Cake, but I'm only going to stamp and cut one mug just for time saving, right? So I've already got the other one in Crumb Cake cut out and ready to go. All right, let me get my machine out of the way. And I'm going to use the inside of this Pool Party, this little circle. That's what I'm going to stamp my sentiment on. Okay, so now I've got my Pecan Pie, and I've got my Pool Party mug that I've cut the middle out. I'm going to add a little bit of glue, and I'm going to glue this Pool Party onto the Pecan Pie. And there's 2 reasons why I like this technique. Number one, I don't need to color around with a blend to try to fill in the coffee with this, and it also gives it just the slightest bit of dimension like an actual coffee mug, right? So your coffee is a little bit lower than the edge of the mug, if that makes sense. So I'm just lining it up. I've got my mug, and now I am going to grab a fill, and I'm going to do the heart one, and I'll use Crumb Cake for this. All right, so now I'm just going to stamp my fill right in the inside of this mug. I find I have to push down pretty hard with this fill stamp. I can tell too, like it's just a little bit spotty, but it'll be fine. It works. All right, so that is how I like to do that mug, and I want to add just a little bit more color with a blend around the edges of that mug. I've got stuff everywhere. Okay, so I've got my pool party, and I'll use the dark, and I'm just going to fill in where they're shading. Just in the little, you can just see the little lines on your stamp, and that's where I like to fill in with a darker blend. Thank you, Nancy, you did nail it. And then I'm just gonna add a little more color to my mug with my light pool party, and I'll do that around the edge of the mug. And just like so. So it just adds a little bit of dimension to your mug, so it's not all the same color as your cardstock. All right, so here is the one I did in Crumb Cake, and here is the pool party. So those two are done. I'm gonna add just a little bit of shading to the Crumb Cake mug. Again, just following those lines and adding a little bit of color. And I think it's just fine the way it is. All right, so now, oh, you know what I did? I forgot, I'm gonna gently pull this apart. I forgot to add some background stamps to my card base. So I'm going to very gently pull off my dimensionals, and if I tear the cardstock, that's okay, because I'm going to recover it anyway. So my bad, I had my notes for a reason, but I wasn't following them. All right, that's okay. So in Early Espresso, I am going to randomly stamp around the edges of the card the coffee rings. I'm glad that was an easy fix. I don't think I've ever done an online class where I haven't made some mistake. All right. And then I'm also going to do some coffee splatters. And I'll do those ones in Crumb Cake. Man, things are getting cluttered on my workspace. Holy smokes. Okay. Oops. I almost lost that snap. Okay, so Crumb Cake for the splatters. Again, just random. I don't need to worry about the middle of the card because that's going to be covered. And when you're stamping on the front edge of the card, just fold it over and you won't get any on the back edge. Unless you want it on the back edge, then, you know, you do you. I love little stamps that add texture to your cards. So the coffee rings and the splatters, I'll get a lot of use out of these. All right, fixed. Yeah, exactly, Nancy. Easily fixable. All right. My dimensionals still have a bit of stick. Sometimes when I need to pull a layer off, I replace the dimensionals. It just depends how sticky they feel, but these ones feel pretty good. Okay, so now you just layer on your coffee mugs, however you want them. And what I'm going to do with this one is glue down my pool party, and then I'm going to pop up the other mug that I did in the crumb cake. And I'm just going to put glue on 3/4 of this because I know I'm going to have a little bit of overhang, and I don't need any glue on that. And then this one I will do like so. Where are my dimensionals? And then I'm just going to add a dimensional right to the corners here, just above the trim and underneath. And pop that down like so. There. All right, just like this. Now I'm going to stamp a sentiment. Where did I put it? Oh, here it is. Okay, you're the best part of my day. I will do that one in early espresso, right on this little die cut circle that we cut out of the pool party mug. Like so, if you can see that. And then this one, I'm just going to pop up right, maybe, I think I'm going to put it just in the corner here. I think. I'm debating. Hang on, let me think about it. Where do I want it? Yeah, like that. That works. Okay, so I'm going to put a dimensional just underneath that corner. And then it should, oh no, I don't like that. That's not going to work. Correction, I'm going to put a dimensional right on this layer. There. Perfect. All right. The front of the card needs a little bit of bling. I've got my swirly dots. Can't remember. Yes, adhesive back swirl dots that come with a suite. And I will use, I think these are pecan pie. These brownie ones, I think, but I could be wrong. And I'm just going to add 3. All right, now put that aside, and all that needs to happen for this card is the inside layer. Oh, Helen, I just saw your comment. Thanks for joining all the way from New Zealand. That's really nice that you tuned in today. All right, so you can do whatever you want on the inside of the card. I am going to add my coffee rings in each corner. And then just glue it down to the inside, and card number 2 is done. For those of you who tuned in to last month's online class, I went over time. I think it was an hour and 15 minutes, and that really wasn't my intention. So going forward, I am making a conscious effort to not design cards that are going to be that time consuming. Because an hour and 15 minutes is a long time online, in my opinion. All right, card number 2. Okay, get that out of the way, and we are on to our last project. And this is a fun little gift card holder. So how perfect for a coffee themed set, right? Just throw a little coffee card in here. This coffee card I have had since I was 29, I think. Yeah, I was 29. When I moved out to the island from Alberta, I had a very good friend. His name is Mike. And he sent me this personalized Starbucks card, and I thought that was so cool. And he put Kate's card, and underneath it, in brackets, Jasper's too. I don't know if you can see that. But that, when I moved out to the island, I had a Hungarian Vizsla. If you don't know what that is, it's a breed of dog, and they were crossed, or they are crossed with bloodhounds and Weimaraners. So yeah, he was a cutie. He was a good dog, but sadly he is not around anymore because our pets do not outlive us usually. All right, I'm gonna just flip my instructions over, so maybe this time I'll follow along so I don't make any mistakes. So we have our card base. This is 11 by 4 1/4, and I've scored it at 5 1/2 and 1 1/2. And then we've got a layer of pattern paper for the front, which is 3 3/4 by 4. This is for the inside, 3 3/4 by 4. And I've got some patterned paper, which is 1 1/4 by 4. So 2 of those. All right. So what we're going to do, oh, and I've got this piece of designer series paper we're going to stamp on. And then this is another piece of designer series paper. These are all from the Latte Love suite, and we're going to use that for the fill in our coffee mug. So same thing. Oh, and this tiny little piece, I almost lost it. This is 2 1/2, and this is for a sentiment. So I'm going to put that somewhere I don't lose it, just in the corner there. And we will get started. So we'll just start out by building our card base. All right, super simple gift card holder. All right, so I'm going to glue down, where's my glue? There it is. A piece of pattern paper just to the front in between the 5 1/2 score line and the 1 1/2 score line. All right, just like so. This is one of the simplest fun projects you can make. Just too easy. All right, now this piece is going to go on the edge of the card, in between the 1 1/2 score line and the right edge of your card. So just a little bit of glue. And then I'll just line it up so it has the same border as the bottom and the top of the first piece of designer series paper that I glued down. Yeah, Lost Lagoon is really nice, isn't it? I really like to pair it with any of the shades of brown. Okay, so now this, where we scored at 1 1/2, is just going to fold over, and that is going to be our gift card holder. So you can fold that over, and you can choose with any punch you have. You can just punch out a little finger grip, or not. You don't have to, because you can still pull out a gift card. You do not need a little tab, but if you like tabs, go ahead and punch one out. If you don't need it. And then you just want to take a little bit of tear and tape, or if you're using Tombow, just a thin bead on the top and bottom edge of that flap. I like to use tear and tape. It's pretty strong and it's not messy for these little, when you need to glue something down to make a flap, right? All right, so fold it over, press down, and there is your gift card holder. So that is out of the way. Now, before I move on, I'm going to add some trim. So I've taken this polka dot trim and I've just cut it in half, only because I wanted it a bit thinner. So if you wanted to make a bow with this polka dot trim, it's a lot easier to do if you cut that in half. So this, now I'm just gonna put on the, inside. And what I'm gonna do is, I'm just gonna put a little bit of tear and tape down where I want to stick it. And I'll make sure wherever I put it, I'm going to cover up my seam with one of my coffee mugs. So I just want to make sure that I'm going to have enough room to do that. So I don't want it right against the edge. Oops, I need a new piece of tear and tape. Maybe, I'm not sure, about ½ an inch from the edge. So I don't want too much tear and tape either, because I don't want anything to show. So I just want to make sure it's not too big, but it's enough to hold down my trim. And then I'm going to cover that up with a mug. All right, so I'm just taking the edge of this polka dot trim and I'm going to push it down onto that piece of tear and tape. And then I'm going to meet the edge and trim off my excess. If you can see, I don't know if you can see that little seam, but there's a tiny little seam there, and I'm going to cover that up with a coffee mug. And just to make sure this sticks down, I'm also going to put a little bit of tear and tape over top, but not too much, because I don't want it to show. So now I know that my coffee mug has to cover this tape and this seam. And I have, where's my second one? Just 2 pieces of linen thread that I'm going to thread through the top of that twine, or sorry, ribbon. I don't know if it's ribbon or trim. I think it's called trim. And I'm going to tie a double bow. And I want it closer to the top. Cut my nails last night and they're just a little tiny bit too short for grabbing things. All right, so I've got that twine tied into a double bow, and I like to just kind of finagle it where I want it. And once I have it the way I like it, I will cut the edges, or the excess twine off, just because I don't need that much. Just a little bit of ends. All right, get that out of the way. Now, our second designer's series paper is just going to get glued onto the right edge of the inside of the card. Very, very simple. All right, if I can finish this card in 6 minutes, I'm going to feel pretty good about my timing. 45 minutes is okay for 3 cards. All right, so that's done. What did I do with all my other, oh, here they are. Okay, so now what I need to do is stamp out 2 mugs. And I also have my little inside piece. So I think I'm going to do my inside piece. I just checked what I did on my sample. So I'm going to use this tiny, tiny sentiment that says, "This one's on me." And I'll stamp that in Early Espresso. Right in the middle this white layer. I'm really impressed with these photopolymer stamps. Like, that is a tiny, tiny sentiment stamp, and it stamps so crisp. I just love it. And then coffee bean in the corner, and the inside is done. All right, a little bit of glue. Oh, maybe a little heavy glue. It's warm in the house. We had a fire last night because it was chilly, and now my glue is nice and warm, and it flows so freely when it's warm. All right, now I made a slight mistake, so don't do what I did. I should have checked before I added that inside layer, because what I needed to do is actually flip that around. So I have less, or I don't have matching borders, right? So I put the long side widthwise, and I should have turned it around. So it still works, but as you can see, I've got a little bit of a white edge that I don't love. So don't be like Kate and just double check before you stamp and glue that you've actually got the right the right way. So you want the 3 3/4 side to be along the top, not the 4-inch side like I've done. It still works. I'm not changing it, but it is not how I meant that to go. That's fine. So, like classic Kate, I have made some mistakes, but none of the mistakes I've made are going to be detrimental, right? They're all fixable or workable, whatever the case. So now what we're going to do is we're going to stamp a mug in early espresso on this piece of designer series paper. So you choose what direction you want, whether you have the stripes going up and down or if you have the stripes going sideways. I'm going to choose up and down. It doesn't really matter, it is just preference. And now I'm going to grab my cut and emboss machine, and we're going to cut that out. Let me just pull this up again, this beast. All right, so I'm going to cut out the mug, and then I'm also going to cut out the fill out of this piece of designer series paper as soon as I find my die cuts. All right, so that one's there, and then this little one, and I just want to get it, I don't want it to be all the same color, so I just want to grab a piece. I'm going to cut through a piece that's got some of that 2 different colors in there, so there it looks like you've got a bit of swirl in your copy, right? All right, I'm going to line up my mug. Now, the card sample has 2 mugs, but I've gone ahead and pre-stamped one just for time. So we're just going to cut and stamp one, but the card itself does have 2. Oh, thanks, Nancy, right? It looks like the white border was intentional. Only I will know. Well, anyway, it's just, I'm on par with any time I do a tutorial, so usually I'm never perfect, but I'm all right with that. Not many of us are perfect. Okay, machine's out of the way, and I'll pop out my mug. And I'm just going to throw my die cuts back into, well, back where they're supposed to go. So I don't know if you guys use magnet sheets, but I buy these from Amazon, and they work so well for keeping my dies easily accessible, and also they don't slide around. But I keep the page that they come on. It's back here, and I've also, I don't know if you can see that, I've taped it down, but I've drawn around where each die goes, so I'll always know if I'm missing one, exactly which one I'm missing. But you can't see that, what I traced, when I put the magnet sheet on there. So when I've got die cuts that I use often, I will throw in a magnet sheet. It just makes it easier, in my opinion. Okay, so we've got our mug, we've got some fill, so we're just gonna add a little bit of glue to the back of this, and we'll stick that down to the inside of this coffee cup. And then I'm going to add a little bit of Lost Lagoon, light Lost Lagoon. Actually, no, not light, dark Lost Lagoon, and I'm going to add a little bit of shading. So again, I'm just going to add a bit more color to anywhere that I see a line. And you can use your bullet tip or your brush tip, whatever you prefer. I like my brush tip, but the bullet tip is very handy for anything that's really small and precise. So I'm just going along the lines of the coffee mug, just adding a little bit more shadow. And I'm pretty light on my blend because I don't want it too thick. And you can follow around to the edges. Oh, my husband's out of bed. Good thing we're almost done. And then I'm going to take my light Lost Lagoon, and I'm just going to add, using bullet tip, not intentionally, just because that's the cap I pulled off. And I'm just adding darker color around the lip of the mug. All right, we're almost done. Okay, so we've got our mug like this, and then I've gone ahead and pre-stamped and cut one out yesterday. And we're going to add this to the front of the card. And I'm going to pop them up with dimensionals. All right, so I like to put my dimensional down on the side so I know how much I need to cover, and then I'm going to put one on the corner of this mug. I'll throw this one down first, and that way I know I've got that tape covered up. All right, and then I'm just going to offset it just slightly. Morning, honey. You want to come over here and say hi? That's a hard no. Oh, if you guys could have seen the look I got. All right, so I am going to use Thanks So Much in Early Espresso on my little piece of Lost Lagoon that's 2 by 1/2. And I will use my Early Espresso. Perfect. Okay, almost done. So now what I want to do with the sentiment is I'm going to pop up part of it, the back edge, just I'll put a dimensional right underneath Much, and then I'll add a little bit of glue underneath Thanks, and then that is going to adhere to the coffee mug. And all we have to do to finish this card up is add a little bit of bling with the swirly dots, and it's done. Okay, so I'm just going to line it up here and gently press down on that mug where I put the glue, and then we'll add some swirly dots. Normally I use my Take Your Pick tool to pick up these embellishments, but I don't know where it is today. Okay, card number 3 is done. So let's just go over quickly everything we've done today. So card number 1 was our simple stamping, which is just paper, ink, and stamps. And then we stepped it up a bit with our second card design and finished off with a super easy gift card holder. All right, that is it. So before I let you go, just a few things I wanted to talk about that are coming up and coming. So May 18th, the Canadian Stamper and I are collaborating to host a crafty spring social. So if you are local and you want to come, we have a couple spots left. It is $40 to register and you get $25 in new product. There's 4 make and takes. There's a goodie station where we'll be doing some fun crafts with new ink colors. Prizes, games, a grand prize draw for a mini cut and emboss machine and some treats and snacks, and that's 10 to 3 at a very lovely venue in Colwyn. So if you are local and you're interested, reach out to either myself or the Canadian Stamper and we will hook you up. Next free online class will be Sunday, May 26th. I don't know what stamp set I'll be using, but I'm going to figure that out sometime over the next week. Something new from the new catalog. And for those of you who come to my in-person classes, you probably already know this, but I'm going to take a break over the summer from in-person. But I will be doing a transition into some online classes, probably starting in June, but I just need to get set up with maybe Zoom and some other stuff. So that is it. I'm going to flip the camera around. And thank you all for tuning in and joining me for this class. I hope you enjoyed it. If you catch me on a replay, either on Facebook or YouTube, say hello, tell me where you're from. And of course, if you make these projects, I would love to see what you make, so throw them in the comments. I hope everybody has a lovely day, and thanks for tuning in and watching me live on your Sunday morning. All right, I'll talk to everyone soon.